Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Here.
David Seymour.
Present.
Jeff Hallgren.
Yes, here.
Samantha McDavid.
Present.
Sarah Moses.
Here. Okay, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we'll go ahead and move on to public hearing on e-learning in lieu of emergency days.
Yes. Oops, sorry.
Go.
Because of COVID, this item is actually really odd, as it literally feels like a step backwards in time. Just prior to COVID-19, remote e-learning was brand new, and schools were seeking ways to teach remotely so as not to use snow days. The State Board of Education permitted this by adopting e-learning. Last fall, it became a state requirement for school districts to submit a proposal outlining their e-learning plans, as well as conduct a public hearing to be able to use e-learning in lieu of snow days. Even though we've had remote learning for many months, this legal requirement has not changed. We still need to seek a board approval for use of e-learning for snow days. As part of this board report, all of the required documents are available for public review. Now, there are rumors that ISBE will do away with this clearly dated requirement. However, this has not yet happened. As a result, we seek board approval tonight so we can move forward in case the ISBE change doesn't happen in a timely fashion. Any questions or comments?
No, seems clear.
Okay, so the recommended action is that it recommended that the Board of Education move to open the public hearing on e-learning in lieu of emergency days. Roll call? Or sorry, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call?
Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
I apologize. Everything I said was supposed to come after that. I
okay.
jumped the gun.
It's okay.
But it's out there now.
Okay. So there's no one here from the public. Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing on e-learning in lieu of emergency days. Recommended action. It is recommended that the Board of Education move to close the public hearing on e-learning in lieu of emergency days. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call?
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
Okay, next is public participation and recognition. Recognition, Cortland, Jefferson, and Tyler Elementary School awarded the Illinois Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance Blue Ribbon status. Ms. Kelly Zerby and Melanie Bickley. Congratulations. Almost.
In just a moment, we can.
Like I do all day with the kids to unmute. Thank you. The Illinois Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance has recently awarded Blue Ribbon status to 3 of our elementary schools, Cortland, Jefferson, and Tyler. The award is given to schools with PE programs with exemplary quality and commitment to Illinois state learning standards in physical education. The recognition period lasts for 5 years. As a recipient of this award, the school and staff will be a model of excellence in the state and provide encouragement for all schools in their pursuits to develop rigorous and effective physical education programs. This award is very exciting because the criteria is both rigorous and reflective, and we will now be recognized historically in an elite group of schools and educators in the state of Illinois, which also sets a tone for the future of physical education in the state. Only schools who have daily PE programs can apply, and there is an extensive online application process, and we have to rate our programs and supply many artifacts. So congratulations to Bill McGuire, Shay Sticka, and Emily Young at Cortland, Brandon Daub and Kimberly Tinsley at Tyler, and Emily Young and myself, Kelly Zerby at Jefferson, for working hard as teachers for our students and for all the hard work to attain the blue ribbon for their schools. Thank you.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
A lot of hard work. Thank you so much for doing that.
Next is public comment. Do we have any public comment? Okay,
No public comment.
no public comment tonight. Next is board correspondence. Do we have any board correspondence updates?
None.
Nope.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on next to the consent agenda. All right, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items A through K, the board meeting minutes, personal action items, purchase order requisitions, accounts payable, financial reports, payroll, request to bid summer projects 2021, multi-year contract with NIU for DHS graduation, destruction of closed session recordings, and memo of understanding between DFSA and DeKalb CUSD School Board. Is there a motion?
So move with comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to ask Tammy if there was anything noteworthy that needs to be brought up about the summer projects at this point, anything that is noteworthy that needs to be brought to the board's attention. Sorry.
Well, that would have all been included in the
It was
last
all
meeting in the
included in the previous meeting.
Yeah, right.
Nothing has changed since that point, and of course, the bids will come forth to all of you for further review and consideration in February and March.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Tammy.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call?
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Okay, next is the superintendent's report and presentations.
Yes, we're going to start with alternative logos and trademarks. This was an information item at the last board meeting, and it's an information item at this board meeting as the board's not ready to approve this. Peter Goff has 3 logos he'd like to consider applying for a trademark, and he graciously stopped up and gave us the copies of those in his plan for branding in this document right here. And as requested last month, we secured cost estimates for this board meeting. As indicated in the report, the all-in cost to seek trademarks is approximately $22,000 per logo. So we're seeking board input on this and whether we should move forward with this at a total cost of about $66,000. And then if there's a general consensus, we'll bring it back in November. Questions, comments?
I have a question. The question is, what would that $66,000? Am I hearing that that's 3 logos that would 66 would get us?
That is correct, and they're inside this document.
I see it. I see several. I wasn't here. I'm sorry last time, so my apologies. are there three here? The D with the barbed wire going through, is that one of them? Is the bird is one of them? And will that buy us any number of those different bird variations? Is the bird the thing that's being?
Yeah, and Peter's going to come up and address that with you.
So that's what will be that particular one. My apologies. I'm getting caught up here. Probably.
Well, I've done a bit more research and have found to where we can maybe go and find a cheaper. I did some research around the area to find out that we could maybe get it a little bit cheaper and not so much per one. When I heard that, I was floored. I did a little research on that, so I think I could bring some better pricing to the next board meeting. Let me dig into it a little bit more. As far as the logos that you're looking at, one would be the crow, the other one would be the D with the barbed wire through it, and then there's a barbed wire, just a barbed wire. That was, you know, Jeremy Morton drew those by hand and did all that, so he's did everything. We're not trying to trademark the D. That's be left alone. But those other threes we want to. With some research about, yeah, that one, that's the third one. What we would like to do is that sometimes we have some.
Anybody else hearing this really off?
I'm hearing normally right now. I am starting to get some background noise since you unmuted though. Now it's better.
Yeah, and you don't have to be close to that. That you can put that even down a little bit from where you are, right there. That's good.
Val, did you make a comment? Val?
I thought she was asking if everybody had a bad connection or something, but I couldn't quite make it out.
Only when she was tuned in. But
Maybe she had to hop off and on. Okay.
she might had to drop off. So Peter,
Go
you
ahead,
were
Peter.
saying those three.
Those three, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, I have a question. In terms of the rationale behind I'm assuming you're going for a registered trademark for these. What problem is that solving at this point?
Well, basically what it would do is we talk about headquartering. So someone here in town would, if they wanted to sell our t-shirts and our logo or with our logos on it, they would have to pay $100. Then someone outside of DeKalb and that lives in DeKalb County, it would be $250. And then you talk about a store, a chain, something like that, where they'd want to use that is not headquartered in DeKalb or DeKalb County. We could charge them $500 a year to use our logos. Instead of when you walk into some places and you see a D or, the old crow on it, where I don't think we get anything. So that's what it's kind of trying to do. Plus, we have our own identity. It's branding. I know that a lot of other schools around us that do that, they brand that. That's what they're going after, just so we have a little bit of control. And they need to, some way how to generate some revenue for the district. Plus, they're neat logos. We've showed them to people I know. I've sent them to you. It's just something to see if we can do something different and, equivalate these logos with DeKalb.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'd like to jump in for just a second here. I see the usefulness of the D, and I think the crow is well done. Being having an artistic background, having a degree in that, I think that somebody did a very nice job. And I think its I think its usefulness seems to be pretty widespread here. I'm not entirely sure about that logo of the of the
Barbed
barbed
wire.
wire. I don't know where we would. I'm not sure where we would use that. Put that into something. I mean, I didn't see it in here.
Well, some people have it on the flags, and some people have put it on a T-shirt. You know, just something.
Just that little barbed wire.
Yes.
I think maybe even before we get to the whether we like, and well, this one, not necessarily before or after, but I'd be interested in entertaining the I guess the rationale of, because the minute that you put this on something and sell it, right, it becomes yours, and you have a first use case that can be defended. If someone chooses to pay you a license fee, then they're going to pay you a license fee. If they choose to produce it without the license fee, you still have to go out and litigate with them to get them to stop. So just having played in this playground quite a few times, that's a really aggressive amount of money to protect something that may inevitably not get us much, I guess, is what I'm thinking. Although I do, by the way, I want to start with love it all. I think it's great stuff.
That's Jeremy Morton. And with that price tag, I would say no way either. But I've talked to another person that has gone through this process, and he said that it could be done cheaper through a different, firm, that I can look into that. By no means am I saying for us to spend $22,000 per, that's ludicrous.
I'm guessing about it, in my experience, probably at least a tenth of the cost, to be honest. So
one school that I was told it was for $5,000 for their trademark, and so we can look at it. I just want to take that next step and do things like that. And Jeremy does an excellent job. He went to the University of Cincinnati to do this. He's done a lot of the things that we do down in the athletic wing. So really proud of that situation, but just something to look at. And I would have to say that I could do some digging to find out, because if it's not, I would say no way we're going to do that for that price.
Well, and that's probably for a federal trademark too, which again, we're in Illinois. Do we really care if a team in Iowa tries to use the same logo? I don't know for a high school if that's really relevant. We're not selling the products nationally. We're not looking for a national brand. So I guess from my perspective, I don't, everybody is welcome to their own opinion. I just don't know that it's worth it, honestly, because you already have the product. And like I said, as soon as you start using it, you'll have first right protection and if somebody tries to abuse you. So in terms of the revenue piece, I don't know what that looks like. In terms of what it would take and the return on investment for that. But again, once you get a more solidified cost, I guess, we'd be able to try to make some estimates on that.
But I think this is first rate. This is really professional stuff. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I do. I have a question. Do we have somewhat of a ballpark as to what we may be able to generate with regard to revenue?
It just depends on who wants to sell it. Like Meyer, sometimes Dick's Sporting Goods over on Randall Road. I see things from the schools around there. So they, I think some people go over there, and if they reach out to us, that could be a way to generate some revenue. It's just another avenue to try to generate some revenue for the school district. And I think that, we would really have to look at the cost savings because of the price right now. I would say no way. But if we can find some other pricing that is more reasonable, then I think that, it'd be worth looking into.
Who did this? What firm? Is this like a firm that we use normally?
That right there, Jeremy Morton, one of our assistant coaches, did it. He went to school at the University of Cincinnati in graphic arts.
No, but to do the trademarking, who quoted us?
Yeah, we reached out with our own attorneys, and they made a recommendation to a law firm that specializes in trademarks. So we just used the recommendation from our own law firm.
Okay, so then I guess should we be having you look to other firms to do this, or should that be something that?
Good question.
Yeah, we can coordinate that with him to get a second second quote. Yeah.
And third.
I went third. Is that you, Jeff, saying that? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I just came on. I was having issues with the connection. It was sounding awful, and I don't know why. But it's good now. I do have a question, and he might have addressed this, but I don't know. So you know, with us trademarking it, and one of the things is that Sports of All Sorts obviously sells the gear with our logos. So and I mean, and children utilize this, you know, to have shirts, and teachers utilize them as well. So would we coordinate with them, and then we would expect them to somehow share their profits, or would we just, you know, would they be somebody that we enter into a contract to allow them to use it?
Well, on the research that I've done, it would be $100 for them to use it for a year, and then they could, you know, they could sell all they want with that. Here's the difference. Our tennis team, our boys tennis team went with them and did like a sports shop, and they're not, you know, we're buying it and selling it through our sports shop where, you know, I think our tennis team makes a little kickback with them. You know, we wouldn't charge them for that. But if they're selling a T-shirt with our logo that we trademark, then, you know, it's headquartered in DeKalb, so we would only charge them $100 a year to use that, and I'm sure they could make that up in 4 or 5 shirts with the logos that are coming, because everybody would want that.
Okay, that's good to know. That's just good information, and I think it's good for the public, especially because I mean, at least I love sports of all sorts, and I think we all rely on them for so many things.
Yes.
And these are great. So these are fabulous. I would pursue, my recommendation would be similar to what has been brought up. Let's look around and see if anybody can do it, or let's find somebody who can do it for cheaper. And I think we should go forward with this.
Okay. Thank you for your time on this.
Does anyone else have questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay, so is there a consensus to bring this back again with new quotes?
Yep.
Peter, I just sent you a attorney to try to get a bid.
Thanks, Peter.
So do we have consensus?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me.
Okay, you guys.
Sure, yes.
Sam? David? Val?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Jeremy,
Oh,
consensus?
No, I'm a no, but I don't think from any legal perspective or financial advantage really is there a reason to, but
I've heard 4 yeses, so that would be consensus. Jeremy, or no?
Yep.
All right, so there is a majority that's saying to yes, bring it back. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll move on to the next item, which is the gymnastics program facility usage. Mr. Ray Lechner.
Yes, and we're following up from our last board meeting, and our gymnastics program has a long-standing tradition of swapping facility use for coaching services with Intergym. And this has been done through facility rental forms. And the board actually approved this approach 10 years ago. However, because services are being swapped, legal counsel recommends that you actually approve a board contract. The board had a chance to discuss this with legal counsel, and legal counsel's been working with Intergym to identify a contract that's mutually agreeable. We're very close, and now we're just going to ask your permission to approve a contract based on attorney review and administration or superintendent approval. And we could take that vote tonight.
I would like to say that I understand that this has been something that has been done for some time now. However, without something necessarily being put out there to the public and the public have a chance to weigh in, I think that it would be in our best interest to really pause and wait to have that document before us so the public is able to see it as well as the district, and we're able to make a transparent decision for everyone to weigh in.
What would the, pardon me, but this is an interboard question. Val, what would be the benefit of that? In other words, what do you anticipate might be a reason that the public would object to this?
Jeff, I would say that given the history of Energym and the controversy surrounding an employee in the past, I would like to ensure the safety of our students foremost.
And I'm just unclear. Ray is going to be looking into this. Ray is going to have some sort of confidence as to whether that's an issue, whether that's something that would stand in the way of this, unless we get really deeply into the weeds. I can't imagine. This is a board decision. This is what we're here for, and this is what Ray's here for. We make a decision about these sorts of things. We don't need public.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, I don't need the public input on every one of my decisions. I mean,
and that's obviously your prerogative. That's something that you get to weigh in and say how you feel. I'm saying how I feel, and I want to make sure that we don't cause more controversy. I'm not saying that I'm not going to approve a contract with Energym. I'm saying that at this specific moment, I don't have a contract in front of me for me to view, and so for the sake of transparency, I want there to be something in writing that I'm able to vote on right now. To just say yes to something that is in the works is not okay with me.
Okay. It's fine with me.
So is this I was gonna say this is a voting item, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a call for a vote.
So just so that I'm double clear, I've looked through all this. I don't know what kind of drama went on before. I'm a little ignorant, I guess, in that regard. But I will say that, Ray, have you handled contracts similar to this in your prior 20 some odd years of experience?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So, and you're working with our internal counsel to protect the rights of our students, I assume?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I trust in that. I'll be on board. Yep. Okay, I'm done.
What kind of pause in programming would it cause?
You'd have to ask our coach about that. Yeah, Peter, will it be a pause in programming if we don't approve it tonight? Can it wait till November?
What was the question again? How much pause would it cause? November 16th is when winter sports is supposed to start. Gymnastic is a medium risk. So as of right now, they could start right away. I know we had a meeting with the IHSA yesterday, and wrestling and basketball and all that stuff is we're waiting for the IDPH to give us their recommendation to the IHSA, and then we come down. But gymnastics, everything's slated to start on November the 16th.
So this would cause an issue as far as a delay would cause an issue for that program starting.
I believe so. I mean, I looked at the past notes. I've talked to Mr. Jones, who presented this back 10 years ago. I've talked to Coach Morelli, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm just saying that, this is what's been done since I've been here. And it's a great program. They do an outstanding job and give our student athletes here, just not in DeKalb, but in Sycamore, because we co-op, a great opportunity. We have a student right now, it's in her second year at the University of Arkansas on I believe a full ride due to gymnastics. And we've had many more as well.
Using this group?
Yes, he's been the only coach, and he's always volunteered.
Great. And how about the people, the facility that we're using?
no complaints. I think that's where they go all the time for all their training. Like a travel, they're with him that gym all the time. And Coach Morelli is very well respected. I go to the meets, I sit down, I talk to other coaches that I see and know, and ADs, and compliment us on how well our girls are.
Okay.
And our coaching staff.
And excuse me for just a moment here, but ultimately, were there a complaint from somebody who had somebody in gymnastics about a coach or about a person in the facility or the facility person? Ultimately, that comes to you. There is a procedure by which that comes to us through you. That is correct. And you have had no complaints that you feel have not been resolved?
Nothing has come to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
I think I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Are there any other questions?
I have none.
Just really quick, Ray, this is about facility usage, though. This is like something, this is standard.
Correct. This is a contract with an organization, and we're going to be sharing resources with them. So we get coaching, and we use their facilities, and so it's a standard contract.
Thank you, Tammy. Call the question.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions? Okay. And this is an action item. The action item is that it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the contract with Energym Gymnastics Incorporated, subject to attorney review and subject to approval by the administration.
So moved.
Okay, motion so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Jeff Halgren,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
No.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
No.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Okay. Moving forward to subject C, approval of e-learning in lieu of emergency days. Mr. Ray Lechner.
Yes, and we discussed this at our public hearing, and it is now ready for board approval.
You mean our closed session?
Sir.
No, that was a public hearing at the beginning of the meeting, so this
Okay.
was already.
Oh,
in
yes,
public.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
My
yes,
apologies. My
yes.
apologies.
Recommended action is it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the proposal presented for e-learning in lieu of emergency days. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Halgren,
Yes.
Next is D, reentry plan update. Mr. Ray Lechner.
Yes, we continue a weekly review of the district's 7-day positivity rate. This assures that we can move forward with reentry, as well as maintain in-person instruction. Last week, the average 7-day positivity rate in the 3 zip codes that comprise District 428 was 4.32%. As a result, we continue to have the green light for moving forward. Last week, we took our first step towards reentry. On October 12th, students in the early childhood, SOUL, developmental communications, and 18 to 21 transition team programs were welcomed back. In total, 89 or 58% of these students returned for in-person instruction. Another 64 or 42% of students are continuing with e-learning. There's been some general excitement with students and staff regarding the return to school. When building principals were asked to reflect on this first week, the highlight of the week was having students and their smiling faces back in school. We did have one a COVID positive case reported, the staff followed the correct procedures in regard to contact tracing, notifying staff and families, quarantining requirements, and implementing a plan to provide continuing education for the 2 weeks. This has been a good learning experience as we plan for our next steps of reentry. And speaking of next steps, those begin on October 26th when pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade return to school using an AB hybrid model. At this time, we have 49% of pre-K and 44% of K2 students who have expressed interest in returning to school on October 26th. In addition to our current in-person specialized programs, we plan to add 2 more programs in the month of November. These include target and intensive programs. These programs serve students who have more challenges with remote learning. We're also planning on bringing back 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students on November 30th in the hybrid AB model similar to the K2 students. Target intensive and grades 3 through 5 parents will be surveyed next week so we can indicate how many students are returning.
Okay, thank you. I have a quick question on that. And just so we're clear for parents, because I see a lot of times when we talk about these updates, parents unclear if they have a choice or not and whether they're sending their kids back to school. And we just want to be clear that that is always a choice within our hybrid model.
Yes, and that's why we survey parents ahead of time to assure that they have a chance to say then. And that's where we got our percentages. So yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Thank you. So I guess I always just try to put myself in the position of the family, and I'm trying to figure out a little bit about the rationale between on this particular thing, right? So for me as a parent who my wife and I both work now, we don't have kids at home, but if we did, I'm trying to visualize how one of us is going to let our kid be at home until noon and then try to get ourselves back home, go get them. And then when school is over at 2:30, 45 to 3 o'clock, I got to leave work somehow to get back, to get the kid and take him home. Was it considered to perhaps have them just go live in the morning? And at least then over a lunch hour, maybe somebody can deal with that situation? Or is it, I don't know, this just seems really difficult. I'm wondering if maybe we're getting a low number of people doing it, not just because of COVID, but also because of schedules and the difficulty and challenges. And looks like I've got some information coming my way.
Excellent question.
All right, can you hear me? So a million different options have been looked at. What we had decided on was with the teachers that the online learning in the morning, our kids have got the routine down. They know what they're doing, and we didn't want to lose that momentum since our percents are still in the 4 to 6% range right now. We didn't know if we might get reverted back to remote learning. Then we have disrupted everything. The second consideration too, what the teachers felt is trying to teach kids in front of you and the ones on the screen, keep them engaged was going to be very difficult, especially when you're talking about K2 kids. Kindergarten has never been to school. Pre-K hasn't been there yet. So do I think the numbers are lower because of it being an afternoon? Probably, because you're right, it's a lot more difficult.
It would have been interesting to see if we sort of polled the parents to say, just to see what the numbers might have looked like different. I know that's hard to do, but because I agree with you, it almost looks like a split now down the middle, like half of them want to come and half of them don't. Maybe this just wasn't an option that, was appealing to enough people.
Yeah, and I think the principals were sharing, they think it will change as they see the success of it, that more will be more confident to do it. The second thing is we are talking about surveying the parents that said no to ask them exactly that. Is there a reason you said no? Was it the time of day, the COVID, or was there another reason, so that we can try to plan for January better?
Well, I think we should fine tune it.
And also I work obviously in Naperville, and talking to a lot of the people around there, it seems like some other schools are actually going a day on, a day off, and actually getting through a full day, which to me seems far more reasonable.
I agree.
And they're not having situations with a ton of teachers, and hospitalizations and that sort of thing. Have we talked with like both the teachers union and the parents about a potential strategy in that direction? And has it just been rejected out of hand, or are we getting resistance for a specific reason, or is it just not something we're considering? Because it's being done elsewhere all over. In fact, Indian Creek they're going full time every day for their K through 5. So, and again, they're not having too many problems.
Have we gotten resistance? Yes. I think because we haven't we just started bringing students back last week. So I think that there is anxiety about it. And I think that is partially why we went with this model, because we thought if we got K2 kids in the building, you can start to see the success of that. Then we can start to build on top of that. And just like at the beginning of the year, there was anxiety just to work in the building. Well, we've gotten past that now. So, but yes, there's extreme anxiety.
I just think those kids are all going to come in contact with their teacher, whether it's 2 hours in the afternoon or a full day. And if we're following the protocols that have been established and are functioning elsewhere, I'm sorry, but this just doesn't seem like the best plan. I'm just being frank. I think getting them in for a full day helps parents. I think it's going to help the number of people who will come, and there'll be far fewer children that probably are having to look at the back of the teacher's head or whatever, but that's just my 2 cents. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'd love to see if we can push this a little further, because I think it would help everyone.
Well, excuse me, if I can jump in, Sarah. The issue that we were having with that previously was food, right? And issues related to the logistics surrounding getting
students,
getting them nourished. And the kind of interaction that happens in that kind of context, right? I mean,
right. Having your mask off and eating. Yes.
Right. And also just the milling around and the kind of activity there. So I think we could benefit from, like you said, Indian Creek is doing this, and what they used, what kind of solutions they had to solving that particular problem that we had rhetorically, we had that problem.
And honestly, I do bring up all the different models that have been happening when we are meeting with our respective bargaining units that are happening around us and south of us and north of us all the time.
It's nice to have some momentum in other areas and us having something in back of us instead of us thinking about it like we were doing before. I mean, people are actually having some success somewhere. And I agree with Jeremy that the logistical aspects from a parental standpoint, what the plan that we're going with seem pretty profound. They seem pretty darn profound. So I can see where people would object to it. I wouldn't, because I'm teaching from home these days, so it wouldn't be hard. But then I would have grandkids. Anyway, so the point is that I agree with Jeremy on this, and I think it deserves some, kind of.
And we have been discussing it a lot, and we keep hoping we can move forward with that.
Good.
I think nobody wants to apply any undue pressure, but it's like I said, St. Charles is doing it. It's not like they don't have a similar population to us. They have a very similar population to us. Other places are doing it successfully, and it's time we get back and get going. Okay, I think we're so sensitive right now to the people who aren't the children that we're here to represent, that we really need to start focusing on what we're here to do. And there is, I myself have had COVID. I understand how much it sucks, but I'm saying, we need to come up with a better plan to move forward. In my opinion, this just isn't good enough, and it's not helping anyone. In fact, I would vote against it and say stay home and do home learning if we're not going to come back for a full day, because it's just all that does is interrupt everybody's day. You lose focus, you lose schedule. It's crushing to the families. I've talked to a ton of families who have all said the same thing as well. So I think that's why we're seeing the bad numbers. And I think it's time that we
Yeah.
at least give this every other day thing a try. I just think we have to.
May I comment?
Go ahead, Sam.
Because I very much disagree. I have a first grade and second grade student, and I think that the disruption the every other day would potentially be more difficult to work out childcare, transportation, when I already have those things in place right now. As well as with cases going up in our region and the surrounding regions, I don't think I think that we have to take a metered approach to this to make sure that everybody is as safe as possible. And when you talk about a school like Indian Creek, we have 10 times the student population that they have. They are able to fit their students in a classroom, and they're offering a fully remote option as well. So I don't think that that's a fair comparison.
So is Genoa Kingston, so is St. Charles.
Let's let Samantha finish, okay? Thank you.
It wasn't just
I understand. Every district in our county is significantly smaller. And we have, like I said, our cases are going up, and I understand that we're calculating this based on our zip codes, and I appreciate the way that we're doing this, but I think it has to be a slow approach. We've had just 1 week, or this is the second week now that we have low incident special ed students, correct, in buildings. We have the YSB program that's also going with students in a building. And then this is the next step. I think it's a good next step. And I do think it's difficult as a parent to schedule all of that, but it's also a step in the right direction that is safe and conscientious.
We have discussed backing up the time as we get better at this to make it more of a half day. Instead of coming at 1:30, you come at noon. We shorten the morning, give them time to have lunch, and then get to school. So the hope is to keep increasing the amount of time that they're coming.
What does that do, though? Who is that protecting?
Jeremy, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. My question is, are we doing any type of surveying of students and their experience?
Not as a district. I think different buildings have done their own surveying and discussing with kids, but we have not as a district. No.
Okay, I guess I think that would be some really helpful data to look at if we were start to collect some type of data from students and what their experience is, what's working, what's not working. To help make.
We're working on the student engagement at this point because it's as you can imagine, we're getting great attendance, but that doesn't necessarily mean a student is attending.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing some more. I'm sorry, are you done?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, some more recent data too on outcomes. How are we doing on testing? Are we testing the same way we did before? Are we in essence changing the style? So, I mean, if
that just ended last week, and so Amy's pulling that data together for me too because I want to look at that as well.
Okay.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with Sarah. Is that at this point, I think it's long overdue that we need to find out what's going on with our students and what kind of frustrations they're having, what they feel about where they're going, their success rate. I mean, it couldn't be more valuable for us to have that kind of feedback from our students. And also, it would let them know that we give a crap. I mean, pardon my language, but I mean that we have to let them know that we're working with them here. And it's nice for them to say, oh, well, I think they're working with me, but we need them to have something substantial. And I agree with Sarah on that. I really believe that that's long overdue. And the quicker that we get that done, the better off that we'll all be. I, as a board member, would insist upon it.
We can put something together.
Thank you.
I actually want to comment, and purely this isn't to fight or anything. It is really to put facts in front of our community. We really can't and shouldn't compare ourselves to St. Charles. St. Charles is an affluent community, and we know for a fact DeKalb is a community. DeKalb City, right, is a community that are low socioeconomic background students are predominant here. So when we talk about access to healthcare, when we talk about access to resources, we're very limited. Though I do share your concern, Jeremy, that it does put a strain on families, not on all, as Samantha has expressed. She has figured out a system. I get to stay remote because of my health issues, so I don't have that problem, but I can sympathize like you are, you're trying to do with families that are, struggling if they're going to have to bring their kids at 1 o'clock. How is that even going to work, right? And so I think that there's a lot that needs to be worked out, but I agree again with Sarah. And I don't think that we should just survey parents. I think we should survey children. In Rochelle, as a high school teacher there, I know that our principal has literally told us, kids need you guys to back off and quit giving so many assignments, or because that is I mean, that is the reality, that the expectations are higher, if not more, with students having to do more assignments. And we know that the learning that they're receiving, it's not necessarily less, but it's not the same, right? And so I think surveying our students to really get that input, but also finding out why parents are choosing not to, and then maybe looking at the different models and then finding a way to really support families is important. Because our goal, it's about student outcomes, and we're leaving potentially behind students that we will never be able to catch them up, maybe to some degree, right? And so that's the fear. And so all of those are valid concerns, but I think that us comparing ourselves to other places is sort of dangerous, just because we have to look at our demographics and the access to resources that we have. And so I think we have to be careful when we say that, but I think it's important that we look at everything in order to create the best model possible, because I do believe that Kim and her department and teachers are working really hard to find the best approach. But I think it should be an approach that's driven strictly by data and by looking at the unique needs of our district.
I would say the only response I would have to that is that the virus doesn't care what your demographics are, right? It affects everyone. But the 100% is true. In terms of transmission, we're talking about case rates, right? That's what we're talking about, is case rate. It's 100%. It just goes from person to person.
Your mic's not on.
I don't think your mic is on, Sarah.
I just want to say that that's not a true statement, because we know that it impacts people in poverty who have less access to healthcare, and people of color more than it does other populations.
In terms of survival,
you're talking about two
in
different
terms
things.
of survival rate.
Yeah, you're talking about survival rate. I'm talking about cases. I'm talking about people getting it, right? That's all about who
Well,
is
right. And
who
then
is congregating and who is not. And my point wasn't that anyway. It was simply they're making it work in all these other communities around us. And there's even bigger communities that are more like our community if you want to search further. But the from a demographic perspective as well, in other states, they're doing it all the time in very different, even more, I guess, diverse communities than our own. And what I was really trying to get to, and which I agree with you, and thank you, Valerie, for your point, our most at-risk students right now are the ones that I'm most concerned about, because I could barely in the spring keep my kids focused on this stuff, and they had every advantage. And there's so many out there with, single parent who couldn't even think about leaving a job, right, twice in a day,
Right.
let alone
Right.
once, right? And so I just have, my heart goes out to those people, because I think that maybe we should start polling people and saying, which of these programs would you support more? Because I think we have to consider that, because we have to find a way to educate them that's better than what we're doing now. And I feel the worst for our high school students, to be honest, because juniors and seniors who are going to be going off to college right now, even sophomores prepping for these standardized tests, they're not keeping up. And we know they're not. So
Yeah, and I will say that, I mean, principals, social workers, counselors, they have been out at knocking on doors trying to get people to help their families. And I do know we are missing a lot of kids. They went to their houses, they knocked, they don't answer, to find out, do you want to come back or not? So we know we're missing some of them. And when we do the survey, often those are the families that we're missing, that we need to hear from. We are suspicious that many of them maybe are staying with grandparents somewhere else because they need some care. And they're doing e-learning, but they're just not here right now, but
Right, in the community.
in the community, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I know you guys are working on it. I just wanted to share my views on that
I
because
appreciate
it really matters.
I think this is all superb and excellent feedback that we're going to take and then we're going to use as we develop our plans. It's really important for us to roll out the next step initially, just so we get some good, solid experience with it. So I do appreciate all of this feedback.
Well, I appreciate the work of everybody trying to make this happen. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of you guys doing as much as you can to make this happen. But I, as a teacher, I mean, I am so distraught about e-learning and how many people that it leaves behind. I just find that it makes some assumptions, makes huge numbers of assumptions as far as what people are able to do at home in front of a computer. And I know you guys realize that, but it is profoundly different than having a teacher out there in front, engaged and in front of you. And I feel that the teachers must know this, and they must get this a very strong feeling about how little control, I know I do, about how little control you have in an e-learning environment for those people that are falling by the wayside. And I cannot imagine. I teach college, so it's not as bad, but boy, it's bad. It's bad. And I get feedback all the time on it. So whatever we can do to put a teacher in front of a student, I think we need to do. And I agree with you, Ray, baby steps, but I think those baby steps need to increase in size. We're going to lose them. As Val pointed out, we're going to lose them for a indefinite period of time. They are not going to be able to catch up. If we leave them for a year, which we're already working on, they're going to be a year. It's going to be a year you can't get back from them. So I just feel very, very, very strongly that teachers in front of children is not anything close to being teachers in front of a computer screen. It's a second place that is somewhere over there on Annie Glidden from here. That's the second place, is that far behind us. Being at school is the way it needs to happen. So God bless everybody for the work that you're putting into it. But I think that our goal needs to be children in front of teachers, teachers in front of children.
Yeah. I just want to say quickly, I just want to say thank you, by the way, for all of your responses and all the work that you've been doing on this as well. So thank you.
Well,
Go ahead, Jan.
and lastly, you know, like Samantha said, I think that's an important point of view, that it should be a measured and surely something that we do in a more organized fashion, because we have to understand that though student outcomes is the most important thing, the safety of everyone in the process has to be ensured in order for everyone to do their job to the best of their ability. So we can't forget that either.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Anything else to add? No? Okay. Thank you, Ray. We'll move forward to tax levy information. Miss Cindy Carpenter. This is an information item.
Just in the process of sharing my screen now so I can get the presentation up. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're at that time of the year where we start looking at the tax levy, and this presentation really is kind of just sets the stage for the next few meetings that we'll have when we start looking close at the tax levy process. So just a quick reminder in terms of what our revenue sources look like, and the largest source that we do have is through our property taxes. So you can see as of our 1920 actual numbers, about 46% of our revenues do come from property taxes, and these are our operating funds that we use on a day-to-day basis. So it is obviously a large source of our revenue. Each school district's pie chart does look a little different. We're basically, almost half and half in terms of property taxes, and the rest of the revenue received being state and federal dollars and some local dollars as well, other local dollars. There are other school districts where it's more highly property taxes, like let's say the North Shore area where they have some more property wealth. You'll see their pie chart might look more like a 75 or 80 or 90% comes from property taxes. So we do have a pretty decent pie chart in terms of our diversity of where our revenue is coming from. So here, the 2020 tax levy process, just a quick sort of calendar of events that will occur the next few meetings. Right now, we are in the process of getting information from the assessor regarding our estimated EAVs, and I'll go into that a little later in the presentation. For 2020, again, we're looking at numbers that are estimates. During this process, we don't know the real numbers until the spring. So we are somewhat flying blind to some extent, but we do have some good educated guesses at what those assessments might look like. So at our next board meeting on November 17th is when we do the tax levy request. We're required to do that at least 20 days before we finally adopt the levy. We do post in the paper a truth in taxation notice, and also perform a public hearing, which we would do at the December 15th meeting. We hold that hearing, and then we adopt a final tax levy request. And then we file the applicable documents with the county clerk. We have to do that by the last Tuesday in December. And like I mentioned before, the actual tax rates get established in March or April when final EAV numbers come in, property value numbers are finalized. And then we actually collect the taxes starting in May through November. Most of them come in basically in June and September, which are the largest distributions, but we do get it through that period of time. And we use these tax dollars for our next budget year, which is the 21-22 fiscal year. So the property tax extension limitation law, or PTEL, and it is sometimes referred to as the capped law, I guess you can call it, in terms of it helps to mitigate the increases in the tax levy. It was enacted in DeKalb County in 1999. I believe it started more in the early 1910 or 20, and then it kind of grew from there. It started in the Cook County and then grew out to the Collier counties. And it does regulate and limits the growth of property taxes. It is limited to the annual inflation increase, which is this consumer price index. And again, not all counties are under PTEL. So for example, Ogle County, just to the west of us, and LaSalle to the south, do not fall under the PTEL. So they have a little bit more flexibility in their year-to-year levy and what they can ask for. So under PTEL, the school district's levy changes by 3 variables: the consumer price index, which is announced annually, the new property growth, which also includes TIF increment, recovered increment, which we did have a substantial amount of that in the last tax levy, the 2019 levy. For 2020, we will not, that is not, we won't have that. We'll have that in the next levy in 2021 because TIF, one of the TIFs will be coming off at that time, the large TIF one for the city of DeKalb. And you're able to capture that new growth outside of that PTEL in that first year that those dollars come back onto the tax rolls. And then any changes in the district's annual debt schedule or bonded debt is also part of the tax levy process. So for the tax extension, you could only increase by the consumer price index, or CPI, which is 2.3% for the 2020 levy year, or 5%, whichever is less. And we haven't seen a 5% CPI in my experience. Even in school districts, it's never been that high. I think the highest we've gotten is like 4.1%, but 5% would be pretty large CPI number. And then plus any new property added to the tax rolls is what we are limited to. So here is really just a pictorial in terms of where the consumer price index has gone the last number of years. We start here in our 07-08 budget year. And you can see it's really gone up and down quite a bit throughout the years. This red line here is really, on average, it's over that period of time, it has been about 2%. You can see in these more recent years, we've somewhat flattened out in terms of what that CPI looked like. 2.1% for a couple years, 1.9%, and now we're looking at a 2.3%. So here is really a chart that shows you what the equalized assessed value is for the properties that are within D428, as well as the tax rate history. So you can see we really peaked in terms of our EAV in 2009. And that was pretty much the start of when things started to go downhill to some extent because of the recession. So you can see how EAVs have decreased starting in 2009, pretty much bottomed out in 2014. And since then, we have been in a recovery mode. So you can see our EAV and the values of the properties have been increasing, although we're still not quite to the levels we were back in 2008 and 2009, when we were at 843 million. We're back up to 781 million. And you can see the tax rate. You can see these lines here. There's the brownish line, which is our total tax rate. So you can see the rate has gone up because with the EAV going down, then rates go up in order to capture the tax dollars. And you can see it pretty much peaked here in 2015, and now the rates have been going down because our EAVs have been going up. And then just the orange line here, which designates the bond and interest tax rate. And I'll go through that in the next slide. We have been going through a bond restructuring over the last few years, and trying to keep this line as straight as possible and as flat as possible. So there isn't large increases in taxes due to the debt that we have. You can see it actually did go down a little bit because we did some bond and interest abatements. So here is really just a brief history of, there's three variables in terms of the levy and how the ask is done. So for the 2019 tax levy year, which is the budget year we're in now, 2021, what we request is always something larger than what we actually receive. So you can see we requested about 57.8 million, and that's the total levy, including the bond and interest. What actually gets extended by the DeKalb County based on the PTEL calculation was 56.1 million. And then what we're actually going to receive, or have almost received it all, we received our September distribution, and now there's just one more distribution we'll get. Typically we see that in November when they're done with all the tax sales, and we're scheduled to receive about 55.5 million. So you can see in terms of what we're actually extending and what we're actually receiving is a fairly a large difference, which is pretty typical because we are, again, basing everything on estimates. So we always kind of overshoot on the request so we can capture all the tax dollars. And also we still have a corporate tax abatement. This 490,000 you can see here at the bottom of the 2019 year is for 3M, and we're in the third year of that abatement with that company. So that's why we don't receive all of what we extend, because there are those abatements that come off the top of our extension. So I'm not going to go through this entire extended math problem, as you can see, but I think it's always good to kind of, for those that are interested, walk through the process of how the tax levy gets calculated, because it is all based on what the previous year was and how we move forward into the next years. So the main thing I really want to focus on here is that there's different components of how much you can receive in additional tax dollars based on the levy. And so here you can see the portion that that last year we received because of inflation, the additional operating dollars, was $956,000. Now, again, I mentioned before we had the TIF recovery last year for TIF 2. So that's why we see this large new property number of 25 million, because that includes the TIF that came off as well as new construction dollars. So in totality, we were able to receive an additional 1.7 million because of the new growth and the recovered TIF. So when you go through this calculation, you look at what was extended in the previous year for 2018, You look at the new revenue that was generated from the increase for inflation, as well as the TIF and new construction. So again, our operating extension for 2019 was about $53 million in total. Now, on top of the operating extension of 53 million, we have our debt service levy. So prior to us doing any sort of bond and interest abatements last year, our debt service, meaning what we would need to pay on our debt for the 2021 year, was about $8.2 million. And if you remember back for the 2019 levy, the board approved an abatement of about $2,250,000 when we were looking at the tax levy this time last year. We were able to abate an additional amount of about 2.8 million because we did receive the property tax relief grant, which we received somewhat after the levy process was over. So we were able to kind of look at those numbers and put more dollars to abate bond and interest. So we abated bond and interest by a little more than $5 million. And 4.7 million of that was funded using those property tax relief grant dollars. And then we had to put about 313,000 in there in order to abate the $5 million in totality, which we were required to do. So our adjusted debt service levy was more like 3.1 million rather than the 8.1 million. So basically it was a savings to the taxpayer. So our bond and interest rate was about 0.40. So in totality, what was extended to the district when you're looking at the operating levy and the debt service levy was about 56.1 million. And if you look at the bottom at the page here, it's just comparing what our actual tax year for 2018 was compared to 2019. So you can see an increase of about $2 million, mostly due to the TIF increment dollars that we were able to receive. So some taxpayer saving strategies, and I know in last few years, the board has been very conscious of saving dollars for the taxpayers and not having large increases in taxes on an annual basis. So just wanted to go through the few things that the board has done. For the 2018 levy, we abated $1,750,000 from operating funds to support that effort. Again, like I mentioned, for the 2019 levy, we abated the $5 million by using some of the top property tax relief grant funds. And for the 2020 levy, because we received these property tax relief grant funds, we are required to do that bond and interest abatement for 2 years in a row. So we already did it for 2019, so we will go ahead and do that again for the 2020 levy. Those property tax relief grant funds, we did receive the grant to support the first 4.7 million back in 2019 for that levy, received those dollars, used those to abate, and we received that 4.7 million for the 2021 year in our evidence-based funding formula. So those dollars we're already receiving those dollars through that formula. And that will be part of our hold harmless from this point moving forward. And again, we'll have to take 313,000 out of our working cash fund in order to support the entire 5 million bond and interest abatement. And again, like I mentioned, we've been just ended in April a quite long bond restructuring process that we started back in 2016. We did reach our goal to level the increase in debt service and to soften the impact to the taxpayers for those debt payment increases. In addition to that, the board decided to use some TIF surplus funds that we received when the TIF 2, City of DeKalb TIF 2 expired. So $3 million of that we used to pay down principal when we were restructuring the 2019 bonds. And the effect that has, it's just like if you have your own personal mortgage, if you have additional dollars and you pay down principal, you end up paying less interest over time. And then also for 2020, we used $10 million from our working cash reserves to pay down additional principal as we were refunding those bonds that we just did back in April. And we also knew that we were getting the property tax relief grant dollars, so we were able to structure the debt to have increased principal reduction in the early years to, again, decrease interest costs and long-term savings to the taxpayers. So just a quick example here of the effect of these bond and interest abatements. This is comparing 17 to 18 actuals. When you include that bond and interest payment that we did back in 2018 of $1,750,000, you can see that there is actually a decrease, a slight decrease in the tax bills. And these are just 3 specific tax bills that I just pulled off the county's website just to kind of show a couple of different examples. So really, either the tax bill was flat or actually was less. Without that bond and interest payment abatement, you can see that the tax bills for these particular properties would have been more. And then I also compared 2018 to 2019, which we again mentioned. We had the $5 million bond and interest abatement. From the 2018 to the 2019 tax bill, you can see there was some increases of $20 or $38 or $43 looking at these 3 properties. If we had not done that abatement, you can see the substantial increase they would have had from the previous year if we did not abate that bond and interest levy. So here really just a couple pie charts just to give you an idea. For 2019, the rate setting EAV for the district was about $782 million. And it's broken out primarily, you can see residential is a big piece, about 56% of the pie. The next largest is your commercial and industrial, which you like to see that as well, since that helps to support the residential properties. Of course, we're in DeKalb County, so we've got some farm properties, state railroad. We have that railroad system that's basically under Peace Road. And then mineral is those wind turbines that we do have here in DeKalb County. And then also I have a pie chart that shows you by township, because we are D428 does have a various number of townships that are within the EAV. The largest being DeKalb Township, which is primarily the city of DeKalb. We have Portland to the east and Malta to the west, and then some smaller townships that are out in the more rural areas. And here, talking about the TIF, or the Tax Increment Finance District. So we have right now, as of the 2019 tax year, there are 4 TIFs that still exist. You'll notice here that we don't see DeKalb TIF 2 because that TIF did expire, so that's no longer, those are EAV that we have access to at this point. We have the largest TIF that's still in existence of the DeKalb Central Area TIF, about 57 million. That TIF will be expiring in 2020. So we will have access to that EAV for that tax levy year. So this time next year, we'll be talking about how that will affect our tax rate. So you can see once that TIF is no longer here, we've got DeKalb TIF 3 that just started, is the new TIF. The TIF footprint is going to be much smaller, which really will help even out our tax rate and actually bring it down because we'll have access to more EAV. And then again, the same number here broken down, this TIF property by the types of property. Residential is a big piece, and commercial and industrial is pretty much the rest of it, so about half and half. So when we're looking at our 2020 tax levy, here's some considerations we'll be looking at. Again, working with the DeKalb County assessor to get some estimates. Preliminary numbers that I was given as of the end of September is our EAV is looking like it's about 812 million, which is about a 3.85% increase from 2019. And new growth, meaning new construction, of about 2.2 million. Again, these numbers will change as we get through the process and get closer to November 17th, when we ask for the tax levy request. We'll get more up-to-date numbers. Again, we'll need to do that property tax abatement of the bond and interest of about $5 million for the second year. In terms of COVID-19 and how that affects our EAV, it's difficult to know at this point. We may see tax appeals, we may see decreases in EAV. It's really difficult to know, and this is pretty typical. Everybody's kind of has a question in terms of what the future might look like in terms of our property values due to COVID. And also in 2019, we did have quite a numerous reassessment year because there were a lot of tax appeals because it was a quadrennial reassessment. So a lot of the properties got reassessed, and that typically means there's a lot of appeals. So for example, at this time last year, we were looking at the estimated EAB of about 793 million. It actually came in at 782 million, so about $11 million less, which is a pretty substantial decrease in the estimate based on what my experience has been in the last few years here in the district. The state property tax relief grant for 2021, there are going to be no dollars allocated to that grant this year because the state funding was flat. So we wouldn't be able to apply for those again. But again, it is what we applied for last year is in our evidence-based funding formula now. And the property tax relief task force that was created last year with various subcommittees. Nothing really came of that report. There was really no official report that was released. And at this point, it's somewhat on the back burner, as well as any talk of property tax freezes, just because this focus really is more on COVID and just surviving that particular, surviving the pandemic at this point. So that's a lot, but I know this kind of just sets the stage for the next few meetings. I don't know if there's any questions or any information that you would like me to bring forth when we do bring forward the tax levy request.
Sure. But can I ask one real quick, Jeff? So, Cynthia, thank you for that presentation. We're not really in a position to do any type of property tax freeze, one, because of the grant situation, and then two, because of the TIF ending. We wouldn't want to do that at that time because that's the only time we can capture those dollars. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically the TIF, when those expire, that is treated like new construction. So if you don't capture those dollars in that year, you basically, what they call it, is leaving money on the table that you wouldn't be able to capture those dollars in future years. So it does affect your future revenues basically forever by if you don't capture those dollars.
That's next year's levy though, right?
That would be next year's levy. That's something, when that big TIF comes off, is something that we would have to be concerned about, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. This is more of a normal year, I guess, in terms of what the new growth is going to look like.
Okay.
And the question that I had regarding that was when would that be something that we would determine? I mean, in other words, when would be that, I refresh my memory as to when we would make that decision as to how much or if we would do any kind of abatement there.
Well, at the tax levy request at the November 17th meeting, what I usually do is I prepare various different scenarios and options for the board to choose. So we could, I mean, right now we know we do have to do the 5 million bond and interest abatement.
Right.
So that's something that, you know, we knew about last year as well. So when we get the more up-to-date EAB numbers and run some calculations, I'll present various different options based on, do we want to increase the bond interest abatement, or do we want to do something different with the operating levy? So I'll come up with some different options.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you. It seems like a fairly significant number. Thank you for putting that together. That 483, it looked like to me. You know, had we not done what we did over the course of time, that would have gone to, it looked like 483 for, what was it, a $150,000 house or something?
Yeah, it would have been a pretty significant increase. And that's the reason why we started that whole process of the bond restructuring, because we knew it was going to spike. So we had to do something. Otherwise, it was just too much on the taxpayer, especially in light of when we issued bonds. We did it pretty much right when the recession was hitting. So we weighted a lot of the debt in the later years, hoping the recovery would be quicker, and it really hasn't. So that's why we had to do that and basically save the taxpayers some dollars, because it was a pretty significant increase. Even though the debt would be paid off sooner, it was really tough for the taxpayer to take at that point in time.
Well, as a taxpayer, thank you for your help.
No, thank you. It's the board that makes these decisions, so it's a good thing.
I am interested in the potentially looking at an option that puts more of our fund balance towards bond and interest abatement, just because the 3.85 increase that you're kind of, it's an estimate, but that increase in EAV from last year is significant, and people this year then are potentially struggling with income because of COVID, and so we might want to consider putting more towards the abatement, the bond and interest abatement, to keep that even flatter or even decrease potentially.
And I'll look at those numbers as well and look at an option on top of the 5 million. And again,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with Samantha that we have to look at it even more so with a different lens because of COVID and how COVID has affected our community, and looking at it as to what we can actually do, because the taxpayers, I mean, they for so long now they've had to pay some pretty high taxes, and so we need to start looking at different ways to address that problem that we have, that maybe is not unique, right? Because we know in Illinois taxes are high, but DeKalb does pay some significantly higher taxes than its surrounding neighbors.
You're right,
yes.
Valerie. You're right, Valerie. That's a huge deal, and I think that this year is a big issue for a lot of people as far as income. So I think that your concerns I share your concerns in that case, both you and Samantha. Thank you.
I will show those options.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cindy. Does anyone else have any more comments or questions about this? Okay, thanks a lot, Cindy. We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then our last item on the agenda this evening is a request to bid media production classroom renovation at DHS. Mr. James Horn, Ryan Bounds, Tammy Carson, and Kim Lyle. This is information.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So about a year and a half ago, the Curriculum Council and later the school board approved 2 classes at the high school, Video Production 1 and Video Production 2. Class has been running last school year and has continued this year. To kind of explain what this class is, I did invite the classroom teacher, Mr. Ryan Bounds, to kind of give a brief overview. Mr. Bounds, I believe you are on there. Can you kind of speak up and just give the board an overview of the class?
Yeah, sure thing. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come on here. Yeah, like James had said, we had basically starting in 2018, the fall of 2018, and then once again in 2019, went to Curriculum Council to try to get this course up and running. The idea was, once again, to kind of expand some of our career pathway opportunities for students. We saw a lot of students really wanting to get involved with video, especially with the students being heavily involved with YouTube. And so they kind of see that the reality there. But the honest part about it was we didn't really know what we didn't know. So the idea was to run it through the graphics class, and soon found out that space was going to be a big factor there. And so what we started exploring was a classroom that was kind of cut out of the budget when they were constructing the school, which was essentially going to be kind of a traditional like newscast type of a room. And because we didn't have any type of a class that ran, it seemed to be kind of an easy cut at the time for the budget. And so it's a classroom that's sat vacant, pretty much been a kind of a storage area at the time, and so since it started to get cleared out, and so what we're looking to do is to try to convert that and get that thing up and running. And we need, after doing some research and meeting with some of the different schools, so I met with over at Sycamore High School, went into the burbs and talked with some of the folks at Batavia and Huntley, as well as actually going to some of the professional places like OC Creative and some news places as well, just to kind of see their setups. One of the things that I found being a necessity after teaching it, and also after going to some of these schools, was we really essentially break the students up in the classroom into kind of like ABC groups. And what that allows to do is we have time in the studio to be able to work. And what ends up happening is I can't sit with 20 plus kids around a little camera trying to teach them how to do stuff. So what works from a logistical standpoint is we get students in a studio to get hands-on, 6, 7, 8 kids at a time, while the other group of students are working on some other items. So what we're really trying to focus in on is to create some different studio spaces, and as well as create a new lab environment for these kids and allow this program to really flourish, and allows us opportunities to do kind of a lot of neat things, whether they be some like school podcast or newscast or different other filmmaking opportunities, things that they would that a lot of students show some interest in. So I don't know how much, James, if you're still around, I don't know how much if we were going to show any kind of plans for it, or what you guys would like to see, or what questions you have.
I think at this point, really, it's the one, just the the 300 foot balcony view, and then the just the permission to go out to bid on this. So as Mr. Bounds had alluded to, the space currently exists within the high school. When the building was initially built, it was designed to do this work, but this work hasn't looked 15 years ago. And that was video production in a television studio. Because of YouTube and because of the increase in technology that we have and the interest of students in preparing students for 21st century skills, we're now thinking differently about this class that we have up and running in the space that we have available. So the space has been, since 2011, just used as a storage area. Working with Tammy and her crew, we're able to find a new home for some of the storage, and are looking for the board's permission to turn this back into a teachable space. It does have a dollar point to it, but I wanted you to understand that there was kind of a bigger 21st century perspective in how we're approaching this.
Well, and another thing, I guess, to consider, I guess, as a board, we're hiring a communications director, and I mean, I would assume that they could work hand in hand, together to put out some things, because realistically speaking, high schoolers know more about the wonderful things that are happening in the high school than many of us. So, this could be a really good way for us to brand our district in a positive lens. Not to mention that we really should be preparing our children for the jobs that they will have in the future, and so I'm all for this even before kind of just hearing all about it. But I think it would be nice for us as a board to know exactly what is planned after the bid, obviously.
I would like to get a little deeper in the weeds myself on it, just in terms of being able to sort of see a plan, to see the equipment, the types of things that we're offering. I think would help substantially. So, because it's a lot of money to put into a brand new building, so to speak, in terms of building ages. So, I wouldn't mind taking a little bit deeper dive on it as well. But I mean, I love the premise, and I obviously, I'm in support of these programs, so we've had these conversations. But
Are you guys done with your presentation or no?
The only thing that I would add is we would be going out to bid. We can gather the information in regards to the true cost for renovation, and then there are other line items that are related to the equipment and the software and computers that would be enforced at that time, so you can get a full picture of what the true cost is to actually get the program fully up and running. To answer some of Jeremy's questions and others, I'm sure.
yeah,
Okay,
that'd be great.
So I think it sounds like a fabulous idea, and I think we should be moving forward too. So is there a consensus to go ahead and move forward with this bid process?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I get clarity here? It was brought forth as an informational item and action at the November meeting. Is it still then on hold until the November meeting for full action?
So you're asking if you can go ahead and skip ahead to the action?
No, I'm just asking at this point, based on the conversation, this is just a consensus to bring it back in November, correct?
I think
That
she's
is
asking if we'll
correct.
be ready for action by November's. I think what they're asking.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
All right, and with that, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
so move.
Second.
Roll call?
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Hallgren,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.